We're all just trying to keep things running for those who rely on us.
Ready!
That's why we don't have time to be sick with the flu. And especially this year, no one has time to get sick. Get a flu shot for yourself and those around you too.
All right, it is 6:30, so we will reconvene the school board. We did call the meeting to order for our committee of the whole earlier this evening, so now we will move on to our consent calendar. So we do have the normal items on the consent calendar, and then we will move into information items, and then we do have 3 action items to take up tonight as a board. So I will entertain a motion. Oh, before we do a motion on consent calendar, I do have the following donations to read. $295 from Julie Jones and Dan Kalvig, and that's for the OMS German Club Pretzel fundraiser donation. $25 from Richard and Mary Jo Morrow, $10 from Lois Beck, and $50 anonymous, and those are also all the OMS German Club Pretzel fundraiser donation. We have a $488 donation to Brooklyn Elementary from the Brooklyn Methodist Church. We have a donation of a tumble track for the PE department for OSD PE use from the Weiser family. We have $30 from Steve Johnston, $150 from Larry Marr, $50 from Arnold and Carol Volmer, $20 from Donna Harms, $60 from Allison Dyrek, and those are all for the 8th grade leaf raking project. And then $10 from Elizabeth Alvarez, $50 from Kathleen and Peter Christofferson, and $40 from anonymous donor for the Latinx Marigold fundraiser. And then we have a $100 donation from James Heffron for food service for the Brooklyn Elementary lunch balances, a $50 donation from Catherine Hilgendorf for food service for Rome Corners lunch balances, and then a $1,011.62 donation from the Wisconsin State Council of Knights of Columbus for special ed programming. So thank you to all of those individuals and organizations for their donations, meaningful donations to the Oregon School District. Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar. Is there a second? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, we'll move on to public comment. Katie, is anyone registered for public comment? Okay, anyone here for public comment? One more time, anyone here for public comment? Okay, moving on to OEA report, and I believe Mr. Nathan Johnson is here to have a statement on behalf of the OEA. So, Nathan, the floor is yours once you get your mic on.
My name is Nathan Johnson. I'm here tonight. I'm a high school teacher, a science teacher at the high school, and I'm here tonight in my capacity as a member of the Oregon Education Association Board of Directors. I'd just like to make a quick statement tonight to say recognize a number of things related to our process in creating a calendar for the school year 2024-2025. First off, a big thank you to Gina Jonan for managing the process of this and drafting this. It is not an easy task, and we recognize the amazing work that you do with that. We want to acknowledge that the Oregon School District surveys in relation to calendar creation, which is not a common thing, and really trying to take input from stakeholders is an amazing thing to do. And then trying to respond to that is an incredible challenge. I also want to say thank you to the school board for thoughtful discussion and evaluating all options as we looked over this in policy committee. I really appreciate the amazing discussion and just how deep and thoughtful all our school board members were in considering the ways that we can make an optimal school calendar. Thinking about the things that we had to balance, there's state law, there's family preferences from our community, there's looking at educationally optimal things for younger grades, looking at what's educationally optimal for older grades as well. And in the end, there's no perfect answers, but the task really is to craft the best all-around calendar possible. And I really feel like our district does an amazing job of doing everything in our power to create the best possible calendar we have, given all the challenging parameters there. And I really appreciate both the input from our community as well as all stakeholders involved here in the conversations to really create the best possible calendar we can. And the fact that we can have these conversations in this district is why it's a district of distinction. And the OEA wants to say thank you for really thoughtfully engaging in this calendar creation process.
All right, thank you, Nathan. All right, moving on to information item C3, which is student report. And we do have two students here tonight, Ryan and Olivia. So I will turn it over to you all to give your report.
All right, hi, I'm Ryan Fahey. I'm a junior here at OHS.
I'm Olivia. To start off, our fall sports have ended. Girls swimming placed 9th at state on Saturday, which is like the best finish Oregon has ever had. And then the winter sports have started. There's 267 students, which is about 21% of the high school participating in those. And the intramural sports have begun. Badminton is their first unit.
Also, with the holiday season slowly approaching, Oregon just performed the fall play, A Christmas Carol, and performance was directed and produced by Mrs. Hoyer and Mr. Doucette, and I heard very good things to say about it. I went myself. I enjoyed it. Additionally, the Nutcracker, which is put on by Leap Above Dance, and has many Oregon students participating, including myself, will be performed in the PAC on December 2nd and 3rd. And the PAC is also welcoming the performance of the 4 C Notes on November 17th.
Thanksgiving break is near. It's like 6 more days. We're counting down. The students are excited to celebrate Thanksgiving and just have a little bit of time off of school. That being said, Oregon's clubs and groups are still pretty busy. BSU is holding a Toys for Tots campaign, and then we're also having a stuffed sock drive as well. Student council is now starting their class projects, and we're all just really excited to see what they choose this year.
All right, thank you guys. We appreciate that to let us know what's going on at the high school. Okay, moving on to D, action items. First item on the agenda is the 2024-2025 school calendar. That came from policy, so I'm going to turn that over to Heather.
Yep. There's a recommendation from the policy committee with a 2-to-1 vote to approve calendar A that you have in front of you. And just to highlight, this includes the graduation on June 8th. The last day for seniors is June 6th. The last day tentatively set for K through 11 is June 11th. That's obviously weather dependent. And spring break from March 31st to April 4th. And notably making MLK a holiday.
Okay, so that motion includes calendar A with those provisions that Heather mentioned. Because it came from policy, it does not need a second. So the floor is now open for discussion. Go ahead, Heather.
Okay. It's like Family Feud. I just have a couple clarifying questions. Obviously, we've discussed this at length in policy. My first question is around spring break. And Gina, Ms. Jonan, can you just clarify? I think for the spring break preferences, which I also want to just pause and say how amazing that we surveyed the community, but that's not a clarifying question, so I'll move past that. Can you just talk a little bit about the difference in the preferences for the spring break? It seemed like they were fairly 50-50.
Sure. So you will see all the survey results that are in the packet if people are following along at home. So if you look at question 5, in terms of spring break, the week of March 24th to 28th had a 34.04% preference. March 31st to April 4th had a 36.84% preference. And then about 29% of families had no preference. And so what I try to do in making a recommendation to policy committee is to incorporate the week that has the most preference of families, assuming that it meets the student learning needs as well. We have some families that ask us to line up with UW-Madison, which would be wonderful, except that it's very early for our students because UW gets out of school earlier than we do. So that is where we prioritize the student learning first.
Sure. And then just to keep on that, I see that this is in percentages. Do you know the number of the differentiation between in votes?
Yes. So for the last week of March, the 24th to 28th was 401, and March 31st to April 4th was 434.
Okay, so 33.
33,
different.
yes. One year we had a difference of 4 votes. So every vote does matter.
Hey, words to live by. And then my second question is more along the lines of the PD day. This might be for you, Dr. Bergstrom. I see that the PD day is on April 18th, and I know there was discussion in moving it later in the school year, but my sense is that you're looking actually the earlier the better in terms of having that April PD day.
I think something placed in mid-April it's a strong placement. I wouldn't go much later than that. It also depends on the focus of the PD day. And while we're always looking forward in the spring, meaning what is happening in the fall, there still is enough time to positively impact student instruction by having a high-quality PD day in April.
Mary.
So I wanted to echo the OEA's sentiment. This calendar takes a lot of input from external sources, and I know that this particular calendar year is a struggle for any number of different reasons, and I just wanted to say kudos. This was a struggle, and it showed in our conversations, but I appreciate all of the thought that went into it, and ultimately, as a policy committee, we didn't have any recommendations that you hadn't already thought of. And so I just wanted to, mine is more of a comment. I think the big part of the issue is, we're accustomed to getting out right around the 11th of June. So the end date is not atypical. But because June 1st falls on a Sunday, that means the second Sunday, which is graduation day, comes a little earlier than we would prefer, and still getting all of the PD days into the appropriate semesters was a challenge. So mine were not really questions, but more comments, and thank you.
All right, any further discussion? Go ahead, Heather.
I just want to make sure everybody else had a chance. Great. So my one issue with this calendar, although echoing OEA and what Mary just said, no need to repeat it. I think, Gina, you do an amazing job, and it's not an easy task, is I take issue with the spring break going March 31st through the 4th, knowing that we've got a PD day, which is necessary in the time that it is, being so soon after. Especially given the 33-person differential, I would move to amend this motion that so spring break is the week of the 24th through the 28th.
Okay, we have amendment. Is there a second? Okay. Hearing no second, that amendment fails. So any further discussion on the original motion, which is calendar A as it stands with those qualifications in it?
So I just one thing I wanted to address Mary's comments, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate it from Mr. Johnson. I did want to just acknowledge and thank Mr. Pleiner and Mr. Johnson and his committee, because we know that given the way graduation falls, that there will be some extra work and challenges for our teachers that have seniors and juniors in a class that isn't AP. And I just very much appreciate the relationship that they have and their ability to work together and trust each other, that OHS administration will find a path that makes it as less painful, if that's a word, as possible on those teachers. And I just wanted the teachers to know that we did talk about that at length, and that the policy committee really struggled with a calendar that might put some additional stress or challenges on any of our teachers. And so I think it says a lot to Mr. Pleiner and his team and the OEA and their team that they are willing to collaborate and work through that so that graduation can stay on June 8th. So I just wanted to let people know that we had that discussion and that I just very much appreciate our relationship.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none and hearing none, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Garrison?
No.
Ms. Bijak?
Yes.
Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta?
Yes.
Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Ms. Flanagan?
No. Motion carries 5-2. Moving on to policy 723, mental health services in school. Heather, back to you for policy, because that came from policy.
Yes, thank you. This came from policy with a recommendation for policy 723. I will turn it over to Ms. Jonan to explain it, but the vote was 3-0.
Okay, so this was something that was reviewed twice in policy committee, and so it was definitely made better the second time. This is a new policy, and I really want to thank Dr. Anderson and Student Services for their expertise. This policy talks about when our students might need mental health services while in our buildings, usually during the school day. And so we have a definition section. In the policy, we really wanted to educate the public that we have strong partnerships with several area providers for mental health, and those are attached at Appendix A. And with that partnership, we do have signed agreements, and we have space in our buildings, and in return, they help us give mental health services to underinsured and uninsured students, and work with families through our social workers and other student services staff to receive that. And we also know that those providers don't work for everyone. That is our first goal, is to see if we can align them with an OSD approved provider. We are seeking a provider that is fluent in Spanish, if anyone has any recommendations for that. So if we have something like that that doesn't meet a student's need, and services are required during the school day, which is a key part of the policy, then we ask that families fill out a request form that is attached to the policy. Certainly if they're not aware of it, we would provide the information to them, and then we can evaluate, is this something that needs to be done at school? If it is, can it be done through teletherapy? Or does it need to be in person? And then we make sure that anyone coming into school has a background check, whether that's virtual or in person, and some other guidelines that people have to follow since therapy is delivered at school. The primary one being that the providers know our contact information, can get in touch with us if they are talking to a student and the student would be in crisis or just not in a place to go back to class, that they know who to call and that we can support that student. Just also letting our families know that our space is tight. It is hard to find office space in our buildings that isn't being used by one of our many partnerships or IEP meetings or other meetings that are going on. And so we're really asking for some notice from families so we can secure that space and make sure it's as private as it can be, and that we prioritize the needs. And so just really grateful to have a process. We do see that telemedicine is the wave of the future, and so wanted to be proactive and have a process for families to follow and make sure that students' needs are being met, because we know that if they need mental health services, if they're not healthy, then it's very difficult for them to learn.
All right, Heather, anything to add? No, we'll do that after the motion. So the motion is on the floor to approve policy 723, mental health services. It's from policy, so it doesn't need a second. And so the floor is open for discussion. Heather, if you have comment.
Yep, I just wanted to say thank you to Gina and to Dr. Anderson for the work on this. it's so impressive. And again, one of the things that doesn't get highlighted enough, it's behind the scenes and obviously a private matter, but just the fact that the Oregon School District has this kind of, will have this policy in place, hopefully, but also just leading up to this, the incredible work that Dr. Anderson and her team and others involved have done to create that we even have a portfolio of partners is a real testament to the whole child emphasis. That's all I want to say about that. I fully support this policy.
All right, go ahead, Leslie.
So I'm kind of echoing Heather because I feel like she a little bit stole my thunder because I was going to say close to the same thing. But I just wanted to say that I appreciate your guys' work so much on this because you're reacting to what our students truly need. You've looked at the data, you've seen where our students are at, and you've seen that this is a place where we need growth across the board. And I really appreciate you looking at their mental health as a priority. So thank you.
Any other comments or discussion? Okay, hearing none, Katie, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Garrison? Ms. Bijak? Yes. Dr. Bush?
Yes.
Dr. Lakuta? Yes. Mr. Pankratz?
Yes.
Ms. Wright? Yes. Ms. Flanagan?
Yes, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. We now have a policy 723. Okay, moving on to action item 3, which is cancellation of the November 27th, 2023 Board of Education meeting. So that means that the board will not meet the second meeting in November due to that being right after the Thanksgiving holiday. It is not a mandated meeting that we have to cancel, but we always like to do that as a formal motion of the board. So I will entertain a motion concerning that.
I'll make that motion.
All right, is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second to cancel the November 27th, 2023 Board of Education meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Okay, moving on to E, discussion items, committee reports. Back to you, Heather, for policy. I think you've kind of talked with us about what the policy committee did in the last meeting.
Yep, you just heard it. And we don't have a future meeting scheduled, not because we won't be working on things, but because we're transitioning to committee of the whole.
All right, and then B, vision steering. We do not have that committee meeting anymore. So I've asked Katie to add in the future C, committee of the whole, and I will give a report on what we're doing so the community's in the know about that. So what the board is doing now is before each meeting, we are meeting at 5:15 as a committee of the whole on major topics that are strategic planning in nature and things that are issues before the district. And so before this meeting, we met about the 4K program. The successes that we're having in that program is also the challenges. And so each meeting for the committee of the whole, we will be tackling a different topic in terms of information about that for the board, as well as recommendations for the future from the administration. So I will be sharing that information as we move forward with those meetings. Dr. Bergstrom, do you want to add anything about committee of the whole? Okay. All right, moving to F, information items, which as per normal is visioning and strategic planning, teaching and learning update, and superintendent's report. So I will turn that over to Dr. Bergstrom.
Thank you. So this evening, related to visioning and strategic planning, I just wanted to remind the board that on Friday, our administrative team many of us, are traveling to Janesville to do the second installation of our SAIL training to look at what we've accomplished in the last 100 days related to our strategic plan and where we will be going in the next 100 days. So we will absolutely be giving a report to you after we conclude our November 17th meeting. And of course, this is based on the idea that the board has very specific strategic priorities that have now been turned into measurable school district goals. These are just very high level captures of those goals. And we have had our K through 6 schools talk about how the priorities of the district, priorities of the board, the goals of the district have influenced their goal development and their strategic planning for the year. And then tonight in our post-board meeting work session, you will be hearing from our middle school and our high school principal to talk about how their building goals are connected and what the strategic plan is for each of their buildings in moving our students forward, both academically and in a physical and emotional wellness component too. So that'll be the teaching and learning update. That's coming really post our meeting today. And then I'll move to the superintendent's report because that's always just a lot of fun. And what this one is, and I hope you all saw this on social media, but we celebrated National School Psychology Week last week, November 6th through 10th, and it's a great time to highlight the critical work of our school psychologists and all they do to help our students thrive. We're really, really thankful to have these amazing people as our colleagues, and we appreciate what they do for our students very, very much. So many thanks to our school psychologists. Also want to highlight our high school educator, Brandy Husley. Congratulations to her, because she was nominated for the University of Chicago Outstanding Educator Award. So Ms. Husley was nominated by a former high school student as an educator who provided intellectual challenge, opened new vistas for discovery, and channeled interests into paths for growth. So what an amazing thing to be nominated for by a former student. And Miss Husley is the leader of our AVID program. She was also the person who was the main teacher for the very first cohort that went through AVID. So she is a champion for our students, and this is an example of that. The next congratulations goes to Oregon High School educator Jeff Dyer, who was recently honored by the Wisconsin chapter of the American Association of Teachers of German with the Presidency Award for service to his chapter. So congratulations, Mr. Dyer. And then we also had our staff professional development since our last meeting. It was October 26th and 27th. We had a variety of important things happening in our school buildings, but through these pictures, you're able to see a few, such as the trauma-sensitive schools and restorative practices training, both led by Dr. Anderson and all of the trainers who work with Dr. Anderson. So we have a really fine set of trainers in both areas who are sharing their knowledge with the rest of us at the building and district level. And another option, which was fantastic and has done so much for our teachers and therefore our students, is the authentic intellectual work cohorts that take place at the high school, and they've taken place at the middle school too. So that is something that I just don't know if we could ever overstate the value of that particular professional development, where teachers from a variety of subjects are coming together to co-analyze one another's work for rigor and relevance. So it doesn't matter what subject you're teaching, because you're applying the same rigor and relevance rubric to the student task that's been designed, and people from a variety of departments come together and form this group that elevates the student experience. It's a fantastic PD. We also had our wonderful kids learning about Veterans Day. So students across the school district engaged in learning activities around the history and importance of Veterans Day. As an educational institution, this is really one of the best ways to show respect for and honor our veterans. And our young kindergartners were learning about books here in these cute pictures. This is Forest Edge Elementary students learning about parts of books, including the title, the front and back cover, the spine, the author, and the illustrator. After reading a text and learning how to say thank you in sign language, students worked on designing their own book covers of books they would like to read. And I think I need to go over to Forest Edge and look at what these covers are. I would love to know what books kindergartners would love to read. And speaking of reading, the third graders at Forest Edge, they had a visit from the Madison Reading Project Book Bus. And they learned how our kids in the community are positively impacted by free book deliveries. They've been learning about how geography and where one lives in the world affects access to books. Students learned about the power of literacy and how people around the world overcome learning challenges. Each student got to board the book bus and choose a book to bring home. So that's a pretty special experience. And the 8th graders, many of you have probably heard of this. It's a time-honored tradition, but our 8th graders do a community service project where they rake the leaves of neighbors who request the service in the area. So this time it took place on November 3rd. They worked in neighborhoods all around Oregon Middle School. They were on a leaf raking mission. Excuse me. Their residents were invited to sign up via an electronic form. And we worked with the Oregon Area Senior Center to connect with members of the community who may not be online, because that's another important piece. So our 8th graders raked a total of 52 lawns, and there were an additional 3 to 4 spontaneous lawn rakes along the way. So this is a really great example of our strong family and community partnerships in action, an example of how we're living our core value, one of our core values. And then a collaborative art project. Artists from the middle school and the high school recently created artwork exploring the theme of "You Belong Here." A variety of media, including drawing, painting, and photography. The collaborative art installation was displayed in the OHS Art Gallery last month. And I love this one. This is physics in action. So Oregon high school students are learning about forces in action in physics class by observing live hovercrafting. This is a great example of our values again, relevant and empowering learning experiences. I also, once again, think I need to get to high school and get a turn on the hovercraft, because that looks really, really fun. And our home construction. Our Oregon high school students in Mr. Prall's home construction class are making incredible progress on their project in these photos. They're preparing for the roof shingles and expect full enclosure in a couple of weeks, just in time for colder weather. I'm really glad they're going to be inside by the time we're in December. That's good news for them. And then our wonderful swim team. Our students mentioned this today, and I think it deserves a second mention. Congratulations to the Oregon girls swim team on a great season. The team secured second place in the Badger Large Conference and is the conference champion in 8 of the 11 events. Wow, that's really great. This is the most conference first place titles the team has had in a single season. They look happy, don't they? Look at them all together as a team. 6 swimmers and 2 alternates went to the state meet this past weekend. They took 9th place overall as a team, with 3 reaching the podium. Congratulations to all of them. This is a really spectacular season. And then our OHS students gave an amazing performance of A Christmas Carol this past weekend in the PLC. In fact, the next slide is all about their podcast. They were very, very entertaining as they spoke about the work they're doing in preparation of their performances, which included a student as young as 4 years old in the production. So that was kind of cool too. He didn't want to say a lot in the podcast other than hello, but that was enough for me. So that's it for tonight.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, moving on to G, closing future agenda. As we voted on tonight, our next meeting will not be until December 11th. And so I will then move to checkout. Mary, anything? I don't think so. Heather, Troy, Leslie, Caleb, Anna? Okay, so we, as Dr. Bergstrom mentioned, we are then moving into the work session, which is the presentation on the building 7th, 12th grade goals. So we will take about a 5-minute break, and we will be back to hear that. So have a good evening, everyone.